I once lit my professor on fire in dental school with my Bunsen burner on accident.
This is how long ago. So I found my resume on monster.com.
Bringing it back.
Right? Yeah, that's a whole nightmare. We invest a lot into employee development. We've got massive longevity in this organization. So the average tenure, so we're almost 55-year-old company. On my senior director VP levels, I've got several people been here 30 years, 35 years.
Wow. Don't sweat the small stuff. Love that. I wish I could do that.
Until the moment you're the youngest and you buy a more fancy car than the other guy that is practicing for 30 years, and then you start to see the tension.
Tired of bouncing between ClinChecks, refinements, and Invisalign bills? Serving patients is what you do best. Leave the back and forth to us. With TwoFront, you get to unwind, fully automate your Invisalign practice, and watch your patients receive the highest level of care without losing any control. From closing your patients to designing ClinChecks, managing insurance and compliance, your TwoFront team does it all. Think of it as a splash of simplicity. Use one simple platform to have full visibility of your patients in treatment. Dentists and orthodontists across 150 practices have jumped in, seeing their Invisalign production soar without adding any extra chair time. TwoFront members have seen a 350% increase in production, adding over $100,000 in profit to their bottom line. Whether you're on the court or in the office, TwoFront helps you ace your goals. See how TwoFront can transform your practice. Visit mytwofront.com/Ingrid to book your demo and dive in today.
You got a crooked smile, well that don't bother me much. You double over working double time, you double tough. I'll just shine it up until the sun hit like a glare. I gotta dare, get the fuck up out the chair.
Meet Stephanie Goddard, the CEO of Glidewell Dental. Since 2006, she's been a driving force behind the company's growth, leading initiatives in business strategy, customer experience, and digital transformation. In 2019, Stephanie launched the Guiding Leaders program to support the success of female dentists across the country. In this episode, you'll learn why building leadership and communication skills are just as important as clinical experience, and why establishing values are the foundation of being able to delegate to a strong and supportive team so your practice can thrive, even during personal time off, like maternity leave. We'll also tackle the big challenges new dentists face, from managing student debt to staying ahead with investments in technology and education. If you're a dentist looking to grow your skills, build a great team, and find balance, this episode is for you.
Welcome back to The Happy Dentist. Today, I'm very excited that we have our first female guest, Stephanie Goddard, the CEO of Glidewell.
Yeah, I'm excited. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Why don't you go ahead and introduce Stephanie since you know her best?
Yeah, Stephanie is such a badass, great person, very easy to talk to, very relatable. But she's had a very interesting experience coming from banking and investments all the way to working her way up to the CEO level at Glidewell, which is one of the largest privately held dental companies in the world. It may be the largest, but I think she has so much insight from the lab side, the corporate side, woman in corporate America, talking with thousands and thousands of dental practices and dental practice owners from around the world. So yeah, we're super stoked to have her. Stephanie, welcome.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here. And I have to tell you, I love your intro theme song.
We're happy to hear that.
I don't know who picked it, but it's really good.
Oh, it is custom.
I loved it. People who know me know I'm a podcast junkie. Some of the intros are not that great, but I like yours.
That makes me so happy. Shout out Lenny. Stephanie, why don't we start off by telling a little bit of your story? Because you have a little bit of a unique story, as Kyle said, starting off in traditional corporate America as a consultant in PricewaterhouseCoopers. I don't even know if that's your first gig, but why don't we just start off there?
Yeah, we can start at PricewaterhouseCoopers. I mean, I was at Bank of America before that. And PricewaterhouseCoopers was really sort of my first foray after graduate school. And I lived in DC at the time. There was a strategy change change, process improvement, human capital consultant for a long time. And then from there, I was working with the World Bank, and the IFC, International Finance Corporation, was one of my bigger clients. And I got pregnant working with them, and I went on maternity leave for almost a year. And they were still my client. I just had other consultants who stepped in to run it while I was out. And while I was out, they called and said, "We really want you to come back." And I thought, well, gosh, I hope so. You are my client. And they said, no. We want you to come back and work it for us directly. We don't want to pay your $485 an hour fee. Can we just pay you as a regular employee? So I went to work for the World Bank and IFC for quite some time. And then life happens and change happened. People in your family get sick. And I grew up in California, so I wanted to move back to California for personal family reasons and started looking for other jobs out here. I know nothing about dental. I tell people I know enough to know that I brushed my teeth and I know it's important to floss. But other than that, so I was actually interviewing out here with a couple financial companies here in Newport Beach. And this is how long ago. So they found my resume on monster.com. So
Bringing it back.
Right? 18 years ago, I just had my 18th anniversary at Glidewell last year. So I came here as the VP of HR, not because they were looking for a traditional HR person, because I definitely wasn't that. They were looking for Jim at the time, and the COO at the time really wanted to go on a growth trajectory. So we were 1,000 employees at the time and 100 million in revenue. And they knew that they wanted to really branch out from just being a dental lab to being a medical device manufacturer. And so they were looking for somebody to come in and run HR who had a good understanding of change management, growth strategy, and leadership development. And that's really how I ended up at Glidewell.
And how many different titles have you had at Glidewell?
Oh my gosh, I lost count. Somewhere around 7, I think.
Wow.
Because I had such a strong background in growing my own business, because I had my own book of business, right? I started to take over business development at Glidewell. Because I was stupid enough to not know any better, I took over regulatory affairs because I thought if I could figure out like employment law, I can surely figure out the FDA. Yeah, that's a whole nightmare. And then I got into sales. I thought, hey, we really need to have a customer experience focus. So we have a great customer service culture, but I really wanted to create a customer experience culture and sort of elevate it to the next level. So I became CEO 2.5 years ago. Yeah. So a relatively short time in my 18-year tenure.
What's some of the unconventional business tactics that you've learned, whether it's from Jim or from others, that have gotten you to this level that you're at now?
Listening to the two of you, Christian and Kyle, in your last two podcasts, Christian, you talked a lot about your dad and how he sort of didn't sweat the small stuff. It really is interesting learning from Jim. I can get really stressed out about things. I'm so grateful to have him as my coach and mentor. I really learned from him not to sweat the small stuff, sleep it off. Tomorrow's another day, come back to it with a fresh perspective. Sleep does wonders for the mind and for your stress. I'm so amazed at him. He's 79 years old and he's never bored. His thought is never bet the company, but always try something new. If you want to do one little thing or try something, probably not going to kill the company. You've built it to this level of success, 5,000 employees. You're not going to kill it, but you've got to think about it before you go and pull the trigger on something. You talk to your team about it. You talk to Mr. Glidewell about it. And is this going to bet the company? And chances are it's really not. He wouldn't have got to a one man at my dining room table to 5,000 employees if he didn't take a lot of risk along the way. But it's always calculated risk.
I have a question. Since you came from outside dentistry into dentistry and after 18 years, what are your thoughts about dentistry? Somebody from outside dentistry would ask you after all these years, how do you feel about dentistry?
And I personally love it, so I've stayed in it all this time. But I find it to be a really fascinating industry. It's a relatively complex industry when you think about it, because when people think about dentistry, they just think about the dentist. When I think about dentistry, I think about everything involved in it, which most people don't know, but you've got the dentist, you've got the hygienists, and post-COVID, all the stress are finding new hygienists. You've got the manufacturers, you've got all this new money flowing into tech today that nobody was interested in 5 years ago.
PE money coming into for DSO world, DPO world. Yeah.
Yeah. And just the DSO growth in the time that I've been in dentistry is astronomical. And you've got the dental lab industry, and now you've got private equity and VC trying to invest in dental labs too. And how do you make money off of that? So it's a fascinating, very complex sort of environment, I think, that you don't really understand it unless you're in the meat of it.
Piggybacking off Christian's question, do you see being a dentist still being a great job for people going into dentistry?
I think it's a phenomenal job. I think you need to know what you're getting into. And I think the thing that bothers me the most about it is the amount of debt that these students are taking on to become a dentist. I don't know how we get around that. It's not just in dentistry. I have one out of college and one in college right now. Trust me, I know how much it is to put a kid through school. Yeah. But it's nothing like putting them through dental school. And then I feel like the dentists that I know, they sort of live in this perpetual world of debt because you have your school debt and then you a lot of them will go into a DSO to try and pay it down, but then you go into practice debt. So you buy a practice and then you go into debt because, oh, hey, I need to buy a scanner. I need to buy a CBCT. Oh, there's all this new AI I need to buy and I need to go to CE courses. There's all these things, but you need it to become a great dentist. How do you differentiate yourself from the dentist down the street? How do you pay your bills? How do you incorporate or not incorporate insurance? It's a really complicated thing. And the thing is, I think people go into dentistry with this sort of halo effect or this idea of I'm going to be a dentist. I'm going to do these amazing things. I'm going to do these beautiful smile makeovers. And the reality is your bread and butter is every day cutting crown number 30 off and doing your typical crown and bridge work. And you've got to grind a lot of that out to be able to get to those beautiful aesthetic smiles that you can post on your Instagram page. Mm-hmm. And you still have to pay your bills. And I think dental school doesn't do enough to help them understand, like, this is what everyday dentistry is about. How do you keep yourself happy and motivated with all of that?
Do you know more or less in percentage how much of the restoration part of Glidewell business, how much is bread and butter, quadrant dentistry, and how much is smile makeover?
Yeah, so 70% is going to be your quadrant dentistry.
And today, if you could summarize all the businesses that Glidewell is involved. I know Glidewell from 25 years ago. I know Glidewell as a lab.
20 years ago, we got into medical device manufacturing. So we're not just a dental lab anymore. We really are a manufacturer of materials, hardware, and software. We have our own AI team that built our own AI software that we use in our lab today to design all of our crowns. So we have 10 million designs saved in the cloud that we use for our AI machine learning models. So when we first started doing crown and bridge digitally, our technicians could do about 20 crowns a day in an 8-hour shift, 20 to 40. Today, they can do 200.
Wow.
So that's how advanced our technology has become. Wow. We obviously make our own materials, our own zirconia materials. We're the largest consumer of those, but we do sell them to other labs. But we also now sell them to dentist chairside. So we have our own chairside mill, so hardware, and then the software that goes along with that. We've also branched out more into some partnerships. So partnerships with AI companies, with CBCT companies and the like, trying to create better workflows for doctors, right? Because really the next frontier, I think, is around workflow and ease of that and just making the dentist's life easier and more predictable.
Yep. I think that's one of the amazing things is how much internal stuff they have. Because I remember back in the day when Glidewell started making their own zirconia. It's like, why should we buy all the zirconia from other people? We can make it ourselves. We could control the manufacturing process. If anything happens, what's our problem that we deal with? And then also a lot of the robotics that went into that. You go there and you have these robotic arms that are coming and grabbing pucks and putting it here. They still have, I think, a great mix of human in the loop with technology. So you see AI designing the crown, robotics bringing the puck into being milled, and then still being hand finished by humans. So you have the best of both worlds. You have what technology is good at and what humans are good at bringing together. And I think that's why they've become incredibly efficient.
It's interesting you bring that up, Kyle, because in the beginning, people were afraid of technology company. It's like, oh, you're just doing it to get rid of employees. And the reality is, like I said, when I started here, we had 1,000 employees. Today, we have 5,000 employees, and we have more technology today than we ever have in the past. So we're definitely not laying off people. We're actually creating new jobs for people who may not have ever had those chances in the past.
And that's a big misconception with technology and with AI specifically is, yes, there's going to be jobs that AI takes for sure. Those jobs are when humans are being treated like robots.
Yes.
So
exactly.
If you are Lucy that grabs the chocolates every time it comes on the conveyor belt, You're being treated like a robot, right? So let's just have a robot do that. What we know is that AI and robotics are not great at hand polishing or adding little mamelons, painting, doing the final little touches. And that's where you bring the humans in.
You don't need much artistry for a single molar. You're not going to need a human to do a single molar. It's a constant evolution. Technology does take part of our job, but usually companies that are investing in technology, they are smarter. And because they are smarter, they are growing. And because they are growing, even with technology, they need more people. So they hire more.
And I think to Kyle's point, it turns us more into artists. It really lets us be the highest level of human that we can possibly be. I think at the positive side of technology and especially AI, you guys are a case study of that, Stephanie.
It's been a really interesting transition to go from a floor full of Bunsen burners to 2 Bunsen burners in the entire lab.
I have a Bunsen burner story now that Stephanie said it. I once lit my professor on fire in dental school with my Bunsen burner on accident. That was a good story.
How bad?
Do you guys still get regular impressions, or what is the percentage between regular impressions and scans?
Almost 70% of our cases come in digitally today. The area where we still see more physical impressions is in dentures.
Good.
Especially for fully edentulous patients, and then in implants. Scanner technology, I know, is catching up in those 2 areas. We still do have some bumps in the road, and in those areas in particular, you see more of that. But I think as time goes on, we'll continue to see improvements in scanning technology, especially around fully edentulous patients and more people coming in digitally.
I want to double click on what Kyle was asking on if you think dentistry is still a really good job, considering you're approaching this from not having come in as a dentist. You've been in it for 18 years. The average NYU dentist is graduating with being $648,000 of student debt, and the median dentist in New York makes less than $100,000. So I'm curious what advice you have, if any, to that young dentist who's graduating on how to be a happy dentist and differentiate themselves in this country.
I think it's a great profession, but that's because I kind of get to work with a lot of really cool dentists. So maybe, but I think it's a really physically hard profession to go into. And I think it's a mentally hard profession to go into. I think about dentistry, and a lot of dentists I know really have sort of engineering mindsets. And yet you spend all day, the most intimate zone of somebody's person. I hate going to the dentist because to me, you're too close to my face.
Too up in your grill.
Yeah, it's like all up in my grill. And I'm like, what are you looking at? This is really stressful. Again, you have to know what you're getting into. It's just like any industry. You have to know what you're getting into and love what you're doing. One of the things that I noticed around dentists is obviously you go to dental school, it's very technical. You're focused on the mouth, medicine, all of these things. But what you don't get is you don't get some of the other things that we get in business school: finance, communication skills, stress management. Dentist owners are CEOs, and they need to understand you're a CEO.
I think this is all the stuff that Christian and I are on a quest to teach people.
I'm on a quest to teach myself.
As we teach others, we learn. He and I are both very passionate about learning communication techniques and then incorporating that into treatment planning or leadership or stress management. That was why I had burnout. It wasn't because I suffered clinically. I mean, yes, I had complications like every other clinician, but it was because of how I handled communication, how I didn't set expectations, how I didn't set boundaries. That's one of the great things that's happened with outside business people coming into dentistry.
100%. It's kind of like the dirty secret. Unless you listen to Kyle or Christian, just become the best clinician you can possibly become, and you're going to be happy. Somehow, no one ever really tells you in dental school that you need all these life skills to be happy and satisfied.
It's not just about having the best technical skills, right? People can learn that, and for the most part, I couldn't. I would drill straight into somebody's nerve if I was a dentist. I have like no artistic, no engineering capabilities, but you can learn to do those things. But what you really have to focus on is being a well-rounded person and being a great leader, because your team is going to follow your lead. So you have to have great interpersonal skills. You have to have an outward mindset. You have to be able to have tough conversations. When somebody's not performing, you have to recognize that when you let bad performance go on and on and on, it's a direct link to your ability to lead. Your team will lose confidence in you and you'll lose them. If you don't have all of that and they don't teach you that, but so then how am I going to get it? Finding mentoring groups, maybe taking some classes on the side. I know like if they don't want to take another class on top of everything that they're doing. Podcasts. I'm a podcast junkie. I listen to tons of them, like Diary of a CEO. You can listen to so many different things. You could pick up so many tools along the way. And that's what's really important. I think it's a phenomenal profession. I do worry about, sure, people worry about technology and how is it going to change dentistry. We just had Dr. Zuckerberg here on Friday presenting some of the new technologies, robot that's going to do your preps for you, the new AI that will help you with your implant placement. And I could see how dentists can say, well, what's my job? Well, then your job becomes much more and maybe much more interesting. Maybe you do get to do more of those aesthetic cases and you don't have to really hurt your body so much. Use number 30 crown prep that you were doing. And how can you utilize that technology to build your practice? I think it's an amazing profession. And until we start growing teeth in the lab, I think there's a need for it.
And even when we do start growing teeth in the lab, they're still going to need dentists to implant that, come out into occlusion and make it look nice.
Oh, there's so much. And this whole new oral systemic link, general health, starting with the mouth, airway, chronic pain, TMD, and of course, high-end cosmetics. Smile makeovers will still require great hands for many, many decades ahead of us. So people should be much more worried about learning these soft skills than worried that computers will take over us. There's so much work to be done.
And people undermine how hard it is to learn those soft skills.
Yeah.
They think it's all about the hard skills. And it's like, nope, that's the trick that dentist school ever taught us. Stephanie, you do something super cool, which is you mentor groups of female dentist practice owners, which is something that now as I'm starting to think about having kids and I see my friends that have 3-4 kids, they're telling me that you have to have at least 6 months of time off in between each kid. So I would love to hear more about this.
It's an interesting question because I would tell you today, like, do I have it all? No, I don't have it all. Like, I want a lot more. When you're going to have a baby or when you want to get pregnant, you have to plan for it. Luckily for us, it's 40 weeks that you have to plan. You've got time to figure out who on my team is going to see my practice, which is my first baby, as their baby too, and run it in the way that I would run it while I'm gone. Did you hire the right people around you? We always want to surround ourselves with people maybe that are weaker than us or that are not as ambitious as us because we don't want them to take over from us. And in my mind, whenever I interview for somebody, I'm always, are they smarter than me and can I learn something from them that I don't already know? And that's who I want to have on my team. And if they take over my job, then they deserve it. And I deserve to be fired. If that happens, that happens. Like I can't control what I can't control. I have to just focus on myself and focus on what I can do.
I think you just touched something that is the core of many of the problems with dentists. Having this leadership mindset that you want people better than you. You want people that want to grow like you. And I see many dentists, they're so afraid is my practice. They sabotage their own strategy to multiply themselves or to make money without having to work with their own hands, make money while they're in vacation or maternity leave. What are the main things that are important for you to inspire somebody to take care of your baby the way you take care of your baby? How do you prepare the ground? I think it's inspiration. How do you inspire somebody to say, this is my vision, but I want you to take my vision as if it was your vision?
Everyone is inspired differently. So you have to really understand the people that work with you and understand how are they motivated and what is their value set. So I want to surround myself with people with similar values as me. So what's their value set and how do they like to be motivated? Some people are very intrinsically motivated. Some people are going to be motivated by money or by promotion. Maybe they're just motivated by helping you grow your baby. They want to be a part of that. You've got to figure out like what is their, how do I get them on board with this? Like I said, you've got 40 weeks to figure it out and you have to be willing to let it go. So you do baby steps along the way, right? You start to delegate more. And then before you're even out on maternity leave and maybe you go on vacation for a week and see how they do. Maybe you go on vacation for a day and let them run things. And then you give feedback along the way. Hey, that was great. Here's some other things that I need you to do. It's about this constant cycle of communications and trust and ownership and giving them a feeling and sense of ownership. Because I think it's so important to bond with your baby, and it's important for you to have that time when you have a child. You don't want to be so stressed out. It's so important, I think, because when you come back to your office, you want to be refreshed and you want to feel good about the time away that you took. It's not a simple answer. I know it's a lot of work, but running a practice is a lot of work.
One very important thing that she said was giving feedback. I think that many leaders, practice owners are afraid to give feedback. If you set the expectation that you're going to give feedback, then when the feedback comes, it's much easier for them to interpret that as not being so negative. So I think whenever you're explaining something, anything in your practice, something that I learned from my friend Martin Mendelson, who we're going to have on, I think in a few weeks, is this is as much on me as it is on you. It's as much on me to explain this correctly as it is on you to understand this. So if you have any questions, make sure you come to me and let me know. Don't just assume that I want you to figure it out. And then you're setting that expectation and saying, let's say I'm going to leave for a day. When I come back, let's talk and chat about what happened, what was good, what was bad.
But Kyle, that's still you wanting things exactly the way you want and improving communication to get the things the way you want. And I think that's not the solution, because for me, it's all about being comfortable with a new outcome that is the shared vision between you and the other person that will run the business with you.
And letting go of control.
Yes, because it's like a baby. I want my baby to be like this. Now I'm going to hire somebody very good to help me educate the baby, but this person will have to follow exactly what I want. What is going to happen is that the great people will not stay because they also have a great ambition and a great vision. So the key is, how can you become comfortable that the baby will look a little bit like the other person as well? And you are okay with that. That for me is the biggest challenge, because it happened, for example, when I decided not to be the CEO of my own company. That's a big step, even though it's a small company. When you are the CEO, you're the founder, the CEO, and you have a few employees, absolutely everything is the way you want. And then everybody's like, Christian, you have bigger plans. You need a CEO. You need a professional executive here on the operations. Easy to say. The person comes first. If the person is not good enough, you're not going to want the person. If the person is very good, the person has ambition and vision. And then you're like, no, but I want it my way. The person is like, but then I will not stay. So you need to be brave enough to say, you're going to stay and this is going to be yours as well. And I know that many times I will not like the outcome, but I will be okay because it's a shared vision now. The dentist needs to do the same when empowering somebody, that they will feel comfortable to leave for 6 months, 1 year, and come back, and the practice will be slightly different, but will be succeeding, and you're going to continue together afterwards.
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying on a bigger level. Yeah, if you're having someone take over your business, I disagree with what you're saying if you're talking about a smaller task where you are the expert.
Man, I thought we were talking about having somebody run your practice while you're out.
Yes. No, I agree with what you're saying if it's a bigger task.
If you're a master in composite and the young dentist is not a master in composite, of course, they need to follow your vision on how to do the composite. But when it comes to preparing somebody to take over and make sure that you're making money while in maternity leave, that's a completely different discussion.
Or even just not running every part of the business, right? I found the same thing as you, Christian. I had this very strong vision of how I want every part of the business to be run. And then suddenly we went from 20 practices to 40 to 60 to 80 to over 100. I have no control anymore. And so what I'm struggling with still to this day is, over 5 years later, is effective delegation, where I can let go of control and empower my people to make decisions. So Stephanie, my question for you is, do you have any good advice on how to effectively delegate and let go of that control?
Christian, you bring up really good points, because yeah, it's your baby and you want to see it a certain way, but the one thing I will say about dentists, they are control freaks. I love you all, but it's different when you're control freak on the design of somebody's smile versus a control freak on the business. And go back to the way that I work with Jim and in the way that my team works with me is, I always have my WWJGD bracelet on. What would Jim Glidewell do? I know his values. I know enough about the way he thinks that I don't have to check on everything with him, right? I know sort of intuitively, I think Jim would like this, or you know what? I don't know that Jim would love this. I'm just going to check, do a pulse with him really quickly just to make sure I'm on the right page. I would say 99.9% of the time he says, you know what you're doing. You don't need my input, right? And sometimes he'll say, I don't agree, but it's your choice. I've given you this role. You do it and see what will happen, right? So you have to be willing to let go. And I tell people who work for me, you need to have your WWSGD bracelet on. What would Stephanie Goddard do? So you understand, like I said, the values and sort sort of like how I think. So is it going to be exactly the way that I would have done it? No, because nobody else is me. But I trust you enough to make the right decisions in the general direction that I would go. I can tell you this. Delegation is a skill and you learn it over time. I just went on 2 weeks of vacation and I told everyone, like, I'm going on vacation, going with my 81-year-old mother and my 70-year-old aunt, and I'm going on safari. I am not checking email. I'm not getting on phone calls. I'm just going to take 2 weeks in my life to just enjoy it. And I have to. And one, for myself. And it's important to set those boundaries for my own mental health too, because it's a really good example to set. If I can go on vacation, others can go on vacation too. It's not like I checked my email at night, and if there's something urgent, I would sort of respond to it quickly. But everyone knew I was gone and nothing blew up. Everything was fine. Did decisions get made that I wouldn't have made exactly the same? Yeah. Do I care? No, it's fine. Delegation is an art. You're not going to get any bigger than a 2-person lab or a 3-person office if you can't delegate. That is the first thing you have to learn to let go.
Stephanie, I feel like you just taught me kind of a lot. You know how you hear things like all over, but then at some point, for some reason, when you hear it the 75th time, it resonates. I feel like that just happened because like, don't sweat the small stuff. Love that. I wish I could do that. But I think there's a step beforehand, which you just said, which I think is so important. You have hired people based on your values. You have communicated your values and they are acting according to your values, which means that you know your values and you are communicating your values. So going back to what Kyle is saying about effective communication. So I'm curious, do you have any tips for dentists out there on how to hire based on your values?
So one is you have to know what your values are. So if you don't instinctively know what your values are and you can't articulate them, then that's the first step, right? So what are your values? And then the best thing is to create behavioral event interview questions around those values. Tell me about a time when you had a difficult colleague. How did you deal with that? So you always want to try to get them to tell you a story about how they handled the situation and see if the way they handled it, the way that they expressed that they handled it is in alignment with your values. I always think working interviews are a great idea. I know you pay the person, especially in California, for the day, but you get them in, you see what they're like, and you can see how they handle stressful situations. Dentistry is stressful. You never know what's going to happen. You don't know whose tooth is going to pop off, who's going to break a tooth, who's going to call in sick, because there's always somebody calling in sick. What technology is not going to work that day. It's insanity. And you have to have somebody who can live in the unknown and not sort of like lose their mind when things go completely crazy on you.
Mark Andreessen talks about how he recommends not hiring executives for 6 months, basically trying them out for 6 months. And after 6 months, really kind of testing it. The way that we're talking about this, applying this to dentistry, I feel like that's like your office manager. That's your leader. And so can you try out an office manager for a while? Because I think what I struggle with is interviewing, because people are so good at faking good answers in their interviews. I don't know if you have tips how to create questions for an interview where you can actually suss that out, or do you like this idea of try before you buy for like every role across the practice?
Having done, I can't even count how many interviews I've done in my lifetime, over 1 million probably. I've been in some of the worst interviews of my life, and the worst ones are when you pull up their resume and you say, oh, you worked at Kyle Stanley's office. How did you like that? And they go like, oh, it was great. Okay. And then you worked for Christian Coachman. So what did you learn there? That's what people typically do. It's like a cursory review of their resume. I don't know what you got out of that. You could have just read it and got the same information. So you have to dig when somebody says, I increased profitability or I increased patient acceptance in my practice by 30% in the first year. Oh, okay, tell me about that. Tell me more. What did you do? And when they start answering it, well, I did this and that. How did you do that? How did you get the skills to do that? How did you work with the front office manager to do that? How did you work with the dentist? What was their role? So you really dive deep. Don't take cursory bullet points on a resume as what they actually did. You need to dive in and get the details of what, how, who, how did you collaborate? Because anyone who's talking about I is not a collaborator.
Do you hire on personality and train for skills?
Probably. Human psychology will tell you, I'll hire you if you're similar to me. So you have similar personality, similar education, similar, like, do you look like me? Do you talk like me? Your human brain works that way. So you kind of have to train yourself to not do that. So I hire on really, do you bring something unique to this role? And can you help me achieve where I really want to go? I can train you to learn dentistry. I can train you to learn my organization. I don't have the time to train you on what you're bringing to me, like what value you're bringing to my organization. We've got massive longevity in this organization. So the average tenure, so we're almost 55-year-old company. On my senior director VP levels, I've got several people been here 30 years, 35 years, 25 years, even technicians. We have events for employees when they hit their 5-year tenure. It's hard to find somebody to stay at 5 years, especially when you're looking at Gen Z or millennial. Last year, we had an event for over 500 people who hit their 5-year anniversary last year. We had over 100 people who had a 20-year anniversary, 100 people who had a 25-year anniversary. What we've done is really tried to talk to you about earlier. We went from 1,000 people to 5,000 people. So we really try to focus on leadership development and skill development. So what you're doing today may not be what you're doing tomorrow, but we want to help you get there. So we'll give you some new tools. We invest a lot into employee development.
How much of keeping people on for years and years or even decades do you think has to do with the company still being a privately held company? Because you guys are a $1 billion company that is private, which you do not hear very often. When you add in private equity or you add in venture, you add in investors, of course, they want their stock price to go up. With a private company, everybody that has equity, of course, wants things to go up. But I think you can be more focused on people. But so I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think we're lucky because my only stockholder or shareholder is Jim Glidewell. If he's happy, then everyone's happy. And the way that the organization is structured, we really do invest the bulk of our income back into the growth of the company. I'm lucky that way, right? I don't have shareholders that I have to feed. I don't have private equity saying, no, you're not going to spend money on that leadership development program. Ingrid had mentioned it. I have a women's program I put on every year. We take 25 women a year. We bring them in. We do leadership development for them. They get a mentor, they get an executive coach for a year, and we pay for all of that. And if I was a publicly traded company, I wouldn't have the ability and the flexibility to offer something like that at no cost. I'm just very, very lucky, and we are able to reinvest. And I do think that is just the culture of the organization. And we don't have that push, that quarterly push of you got to make your numbers, you got to make your numbers, you got to make your numbers because our shareholders are going to be upset and our stock's going to go down. I'm in a very blessed position, and I know that. And not everybody has that.
That's beautiful. Yeah. The percentage between the clients, female and male.
Dentist customers?
Yeah, dentist customers. Yeah. Probably a good representation today of the restorative dental world, right?
Probably 60-40. I'd have to look. I know we have the data. I just have to look at it.
Unfortunately, as we mentioned at the beginning, still we see less women in the lecturing circuit, academics, research, development, the people that are more on display, more known.
The faces of dentistry.
The face of dentistry. We know historically the reasons, but what do you think we can do?
That's really been sort of the biggest focus around the program that I created. So we now have almost 100 ladies who have graduated that program. And the intent was to create new voices in the industry. So to try to get women on the stage more, try to get more diversity on stage too, sort of diversity of thought, diversity of background. For 2 years in a row now, we've had our own symposium where only graduates of this program are actually speakers at the program. So we had 10 women last week on main stage and then another 10 women who did the hands-on portions the second day. Everybody can do their piece of it. And I think it's important. One of the reasons I created it was because when I was looking for some key opinion leaders, I was getting the same guys, and I love them all. So please don't think like I hate men, because I don't. I love men.
It's always the same. Yeah.
I know, but it was like the same guys, and they just talked for Voco, or they just talked for 3M, or I was like, can I get a fresh face? We could share. We don't have to have all of it for ourselves. Hey, I'll do one, or I'll do two, you do one, like whatever. So it's just trying to create some new opportunities. And And I think what women struggle with really is that mentorship. You talked about it, Ingrid, and having those connections. And so my goal is to create some of these connections for women so they can get in with manufacturers. I can't employ them all as speakers for me, but what I can do is I can make some connections for them with other manufacturers or other companies who are looking for more speakers. And once you start to see more women of color, more men of color on stage, different faces, and other companies are like, oh, there's this other speaker and I want to work with them and work with somebody like them. And I think we all have to do a little bit of it.
Christian, I'll answer from my perspective, which is that I think we all want mentors, like Stephanie was saying, they'll look like us. I know I've been wanting that since I was like 3 years old. Literally, I was looking in the news, who can I look up to? And I had trouble with that. So what I found is that be comfortable with mentors who don't look like you. Kyle, Christian, you guys are my mentors. I have a lot of male mentors and a lot of my female friends ask me, who should I reach out to? Like men. If more men are in your vicinity, they can help you just as much as women can. That would be my advice to all female listeners. They don't have to look like you.
Yeah, actually, Stephanie, whenever you need a female speaker, maybe I can help because I do have a program that Kyle knows about training speakers on how to improve their lectures, their story, their pitch, their communication, their slides, their body language, their whatever.
Oh, I'd love that.
I'm focusing more and more on helping women to improve their lectures and their topics. There's a few that I've been working with that are doing a great job. Coincidentally, I'm actually here in Chicago because Friday I'm going to lecture for a mommy dentist.
Yeah, that's amazing. Kyle and Christian, I'd love to talk to you more about it because and it's not just women, it's just dentists in general, creating a deck. Some are good at it and some are, oh my God. Bless you.
People in general are terrible.
Yeah, generally.
It's a skill.
It is a skill. They talk at their slides even more because they want to look at the picture. Can you just not remember the mouth that's behind your head? I think it's really interesting too, because the thing that's interesting about dentists, teaching dentists, which I think is very different than in other industries, because I spoke a lot, obviously, as a consultant, I would have to get up and speak, but I can be an expert in my field and my audience is not expert. But it's very different in dentistry. It's like they had this internal constant dialogue of, oh my God, I know somebody's criticizing my work and like it's not perfect enough. And who am I to get up here? I'm not an expert. I've only been practicing for 15 years. These other people have been practicing for 52. Christian Coachman's in the audience. He's a CDT and a dentist. Oh my God, like, like how, what? So they get this massive sort of inferiority complex. I think that's really different than what you see in other industries.
That's what creates, I learned the term from Christian, podium dentistry, where you have people just getting up and showing off because they're scared of being real from being judged by their colleagues. And we've had a big problem with that for decades and decades. I think it's getting a lot better. Christian was one of the people to lead that, but I think that creates that podium dentistry.
You need to be as good as your Instagram.
Yeah.
That is perfect.
Yeah. I post on Instagram because I have to, but I don't love the highlight reel of life. I like to see real life, but people don't want to show real life. So Ingrid, you had asked earlier, like, how do you have it all? And the reality is you can have a lot, but you also have to get a lot of support, right? So if you're a mom or a single mom who owns a practice, how are you going to make that work for yourself? Like, you've got to be realistic because you cannot be both things at once at the same time. You can't be nursing your baby, drilling on a patient. How do you create that support network around you? So you hire a nanny, hire somebody who's going to help you with it. You've got a great front office manager. You find a mentor who you can call in those times when you're going to have a breakdown and you're like, I can't do this anymore. And who's that person that's going to help lift you up and listen to you? And having a lot of things in place to help you to be the best you, whether you're a mom or not a parent. Everybody in life, they want to have it all and whatever all is for them. But you've got to figure out, how do you support yourself with the people around you so that you can have it all? And then how do you, for me personally, it's how do you pay it forward? If I can have it all, I want other people to have it all, right? I don't think that your success is my detriment. And I really want to teach people that, especially in dentistry, there does seem to be this conflict of, I have to be the best dentist. Other people can't be successful because if they're successful, then I'm not successful. No, we can all be successful. It's okay. There's a lot of space for us.
I was practicing in a building that had over 50 dentists, 52 dentists actually in my building. At first, there was a lot of I was worried, like, oh, they're going to walk literally 4 feet across the hall and go to another dentist. And then you start meeting people in the bathroom and getting lunch. I love all my colleagues that are there. And then you realize everyone's kind of doing okay. And sometimes they come from our practice to their practice. Sometimes come from their practice to our practice. They switch. They don't like the front office. They don't like the hygienist. They don't like the doctor. But everyone's kind of doing okay.
Until the moment you're the youngest and you buy a more fancy car than the other guy that is practicing for 30 years, and then you start to see the tension.
Yeah, you're probably right.
Stephanie, thank you so much for coming on. This has been so great. Where can people find you?
They can find me at LinkedIn, Stephanie Goddard. It's STEPHENIE, so all E's. And at Glidewell, Stephanie.Goddard@glidewell.com. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. It's been an honor.
Yeah, it was fun.
It's been amazing.
Pleasure and congratulations.
Get the f*** up out the chair.
Whoa.